yet every distance is not near. So I remember every face of every man who put me here. I see my light come shining from the west.
Day. Does that interest anybody? The freedom of being released by a simple act. It's our fourth principle of our prosperity journey, and it's about forgiveness. We have touched on embodying this one truth in order to live prosperously. Prosperity is about obtaining the consciousness from and through which substance can flow. Consciousness from and through which substance can flow. That means we are an open vessel, vehicle, channel, conduit. We also know that substance is the core ingredient of prosperity, that invisible stuff out of which everything comes. We also know that it's a good idea to scan our belief system. If we're not living in full and total and complete prosperity, which I know many of us are, right? Like, it's all good, we got it mastered. So if we're not living in total and complete prosperity, let's take a look. What are those deeply embedded thoughts and beliefs that stand between us and our kingdom? Prosperity becomes our reality when we know the principles and when we activate the divine laws that govern it. And we talked about two laws. The first law, giving and receiving. Simultaneous action. One cannot occur without the other, correct? Can't give without someone receiving. Can't receive without someone giving. Substance must have an inlet and an outlet. Right, Jim? Jim's holding the consciousness for the inlet and outlet to Lake Unity out here. We will manifest that. And giving and receiving is also about our willingness to receive. We talked about that propensity to say, oh, no, I couldn't. Oh, no, you shouldn't. In fact, I had an incident with a congregant. I was making some visits on Friday, and I gave them a gift, and they said, oh, you don't have to do that. And I looked at her and smiled and said, you're welcome. And she said, thank you. So our second law is the law of tithing. That's giving a percentage of our time, talent, and treasure to where we are spiritually nourished. And we tithe, knowing that we are in partnership with substance and with source. These laws, the law of giving and receiving, the law of circulation, the law of tithing, cannot fail. The only failure occurs when we are not practicing these laws and not putting them into motion. And that's what we call affectionately standing on our hose if we're not practicing the law. As we talked in our discussion group, a huge element of tithing is trust. All I'm asking you to do is trust. Vernon Audrey said that to me, I don't remember how many years ago, when I was breathless about the idea of tithing, and they said, it works, trust me. And I did trust them, and you were right. It works. All I'm asking you to do is take the first step. And that's one of the reasons that we're inviting you to participate in that auto tithe program if you're not already doing so. So last week, our third principle was gratitude. We drew from Reverend Eric Butterworth in his book, Spiritual Economics, which is available in the foyer. And gratitude is realizing that we are the flow. Gratitude is a causative energy. When we put gratitude in motion, the effects are amazing. So it's up to us to live with a grateful heart. Gratitude isn't about waiting, because I thought this for a very long time. It took me a while to figure it out. I thought that gratitude was about when my good came, I would be very, very grateful. And then I figured out, oh, gratitude, then the good. So we have our definition of prosperity. We all know what that is to us. We know about substance. We're aware of the divine laws, and we understand that gratitude must be in play. So let's get to forgiveness. Did it puzzle you that forgiveness is an element of prosperity? Yes? No? Not really? I was puzzled. The first program that I took that included forgiveness, I thought, what's that have to do with anything? Well, of course, it has a lot to do with it. In his book, creatively named Prosperity, Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore, chapter 8, really encourage you, for those of you that have the book, to pull it out. And if you don't have the book, it's also available. I think we have some copies in our library. I'm looking for the title of the chapter. Oh, God will pay your debts. Good news. Good news, isn't it? So, speaking of this link of forgiveness to prosperity, who'd have thought that forgiveness has to do with debt? Has anybody made that correlation? I'm going to bet that most of us have either heard or recited this famous line: "Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors." Have you heard that? You know how when you do a rote prayer, but to really hear the message in the prayer and to really embody that. Did you catch it? Did you catch the action step in that one little line? As we forgive our debtors. It's like that law of circulation. It's like that law of giving and receiving. So, forgive us our debts. Whom are we asking to forgive us? Are we asking God to forgive us? Are we asking another human being to forgive us? Maybe we should look in the mirror about forgiveness, yeah? So which of those is hardest? Is it hard to ask God for forgiveness? Is it necessary to ask God for forgiveness? For some people it is, you know. In Unity, we teach that there's one presence and one power. We affirm it every week. There's one presence and one power, God the good. The God that I know is not a vengeful, jealous, hateful, withholding God. So personally, I don't need to ask God for forgiveness. I am the beloved. I am unconditionally loved, as are all the human beings on the planet. So what about asking another person for forgiveness? Has anybody ever done that? It's tricky and it's tough, right? I mean, I've done it and it feels super vulnerable and scary. On the other hand, I know folks where the word sorry just slips very easily off their tongue. Easily off their tongue, unconsciously off their tongue. It's more like a habit than an intentional, sincere gesture. Have you ever asked someone for forgiveness and they brushed it off? Oh, I've already forgiven you. Well, we haven't, had the conversation yet. Or, don't worry about it. Or, oh, it's nothing. And I didn't used to know what to do with that. And every once in a while, I still catch myself saying, no worries, when someone apologizes to me. But I now know to take the time to explain to them that the reason I'm asking their forgiveness is to clear my heart, is to clear my consciousness. And so it's important that they hear my apology, that they're willing to accept my apology so that I can be debt-free, so that I can live with a whole heart. So what are our thoughts on self-forgiveness? Does that come easily for anyone? Do we find it easier to forgive someone else than we do ourselves? Recently, I was talking with someone, and they mentioned a life event, a heavy-duty, traumatic life event that happened decades ago. And to this day, it still brings them to tears. They are filled with self-blame, with shame. And so, as we wept together, we prayed, and it was a very deep, releasing forgiveness prayer. Imagine, I'm talking many decades. Imagine how this person feels carrying the weight of that unforgiveness all that time. So after we prayed, we also talked about the physical impact of carrying those unhealed wounds. You know how that feels? You know where it shows up in your body? And what I said to this person, I said, after so many decades, it is in your bones. It is in your cellular structure. You have been carrying this for so long. And think about the aches and the pains and the arthritis and the heart trouble and all the things that come along with that. A true metaphysician would tell us that anything that's manifesting physically as dis-ease is, in back of that, are our toxic thoughts and beliefs. So it's something to consider. What is at the core of forgiveness, really? I think the core of forgiveness is about us wanting to be whole. Does that make sense? It's wholehearted living. And what if forgiveness really had very little to do with the other person? Even if someone forgives us for something, we still have our own inner work to do. And sometimes when we ask for forgiveness, it may or may not feel significant to the other person, but it's highly significant to us because it's about cleansing our heart, cleansing our consciousness, cleansing our soul. So from the other side of the fence, and maybe there's somebody in the room that's never done this, I'm willing to believe that. How does it feel when we withhold forgiveness? Doesn't feel good. So if there's someone in the room or someone live streaming with us that has never withheld forgiveness, like a better student than I, and God bless you for that. Because when we withhold forgiveness, we are holding in resentment, which David Owen Ritz, the author of the prosperity program, Keys to the Kingdom, he said resentment is resentiment, re-feeling over and over and over the anger, the hurt, the loathing, the vengeful feelings, and we're putting that energy in that withholding, we're putting that energy in motion. We're embodying it and we're radiating that. The other thing that happens when we withhold forgiveness is we're holding out on our own peace of mind. We're holding out because we're holding the other hostage on the streets of our mind, right? Every time we see them, every time we think of them, we've got them in the prison of our mind. There's not a moment that we can let our guard down because we're so busy holding on to the energy of resentment. So busy feeling the same hurt and anger and so on over and over and over. When you think of the word forgiveness, what comes to mind? What is forgiveness for you? Release? Anybody else? What is forgiveness for you? What's that? Freedom. Acceptance. Everyone has an idea of what forgiveness means for you, right? Everybody has their own energy around that. If you want to take any notes, here are 3 of my favorite definitions for forgiveness. The first one, I think, comes from Fillmore, Unity co-founder, and it's called giving love for hate. So again, it's a giving and receiving. Giving love for hate. The light in me sees the light in you. Forgiveness is giving up my right to be a victim. Because I've got a lot invested in my victimhood. Wear it like a badge. So I don't want to give up that right. Paul?
Giving up a right to having a perfect past.
That's my next one. Forgiveness is giving up our right to having a perfect past. Because otherwise we're a hot mess, right? If we didn't have a perfect past. Somebody once said to me, sometimes it's hard to come here because I look around the room and I think, they've got it together. Wish I had their life. Man, they are so spiritual. They just got it going on. And I said to that person, trust me, honey. Every single person in the room is looking around thinking, I want that life. He's got it together. Boy, they're really spiritual. We're in the human condition, okay? It's just part of the gig. Just part of the gig. So to any of those definitions, giving love for hate, giving up our right, our ownership of victimhood, and giving up our right to a perfect past, do any of those touch a nerve with any of us? I would love to have a perfect past. I grew up in the 50s, late 50s and 60s on those sitcoms where the families were just like really sweet and really great. And I used to watch those and think, Yeah, I want to be in that house. If any of these touch a nerve, that's a really, really good thing because it means that something is rising to the surface for healing, which we will address in our meditation. But let's talk about the truth of withholding forgiveness. You've heard me say this before. Every day that we withhold forgiveness, we are drinking the poison, the toxins of resentment. Every day that we withhold forgiveness, we are the ones immersing ourselves in the toxins. And so we drink and we wait. If I hold this long enough, he's going to drop over. If I have enough vengefulness and loathing and anger, they're going to come to their senses. And they're going to come to me on their hands and knees. And then I shall be redeemed. I shall be released. I shall be free. So we drink. And stuff starts showing up in consciousness and in our physical body. All the while, do you notice when we do that? Do you notice they seem to be going about life just happy-go-lucky, just merrily going along? I know they're going to come to their senses, but man, it has been years. And look at them. They're living in a dream. So it's not affecting them, boys and girls. It's affecting our heart. And I'm thinking about, we'll talk about it in the discussion group, but I'm thinking about carrying this topic into next week because there's so much more really, really great stuff in chapter 8 here. So I'll take a pulse on that in our group. In the meantime, I invite us to step into the silence, to step into our sacred space, to step into the energy of willingness. You know, Reverend Thelma used to say, I am willing to, fill in the blank. I am willing to forgive. I am willing to ask for forgiveness. And some of us, that might still be a really hard nut to swallow. So what Reverend Thelma used to teach us is, I am willing to be willing to forgive. I am willing to be willing to ask for forgiveness. So if there's an incident, a relationship, a person from which we are still carrying deep wounds and deep pain, maybe we could just touch the first layer or two. Maybe we could just let in a little smidgen of spirit light, a piece of wisdom, some understanding. Maybe we could just let in the question, how does this serve me to carry this burden all this time? Maybe we're at a place today that we can bring that person to our mind's eye, that we can hold that person in our heart, and that we can truly step into the words that we sang today. Namaste. I behold the truth in you. I behold the light in you. I behold the love in you. I behold spirit as you. And so from our hearts we say, here I am. Have your way in me, Spirit. I am willing to release. I am willing to be free. And so we fully trust that it is so.
So hard.